Hello, welcome back to Joe Sports Baseball. This is episode 16, maybe?
Yeah, 16. With
Okay,
some others dotted in there for various other things.
yeah. And for once, it's actually not too long after the last one. Like, less than a
First time
week,
for
I think,
everything.
isn't it? This
Yeah.
all
Is it,
the
mate? It's the postseason.
yeah, it's
Postseason
just
just gets you into action, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah. It's sort of not been that interesting for a while, and now it is all interesting again.
All at once. Well, in fact, there
It's
are
almost
four
too close
games on
together.
tonight.
I sort of wouldn't have minded a little bit of a bigger gap between the wildcard games and division series, so we could actually
No,
fit our podcast in between them, but we haven't managed it because I was busy yesterday.
there's
So
basically just no time, is there? I mean, it's like even what stuff we're about to talk about. We don't want to go too like in depth on games happening in a matter of hours, but it's like game
yeah,
twos are happening today.
yeah, I know.
It's
Like,
sort of mental.
yes, we're going to basically do like a division series preview after the National League Division Series is have already started. So, yeah, that's how close it is. But actually, before we get onto that, maybe we should talk about the wildcard games
Yeah, yeah.
and
That
our
were
yeah.
the one. Well, I guess the National League one was exciting, wasn't it? But compared to some postseason baseball there's been in the last few years, they weren't like absolutely mental 9-8 game always flipping one way or
No,
the other.
I'd say that Nationals Brewers one is up there. That's pretty good, isn't it? That is pretty good.
Yeah, it's just a shame that the game actually flipped on someone misfielding in right field. I can't remember their name.
Yeah, wasn't it a really weird bounce or something?
Yeah, it always sucks a bit when it finishes like that, I think. I mean that
Yeah, but you know, I'm going to say, don't you?
what it what it was though was the Nationals have it stringing together some good at bats
Yeah,
for the right time, and not and well, like kind of no one went into hero mode, which it must be very easy to do
yeah,
in that
which
situation.
is,
The
is
bottom of the
basically
eighth,
what you need to do, isn't it? In the postseason, I think, is
not be a
while
moron
it's
is the
great to
key.
be the hero, that's often it doesn't work that well when you're up against like the best pitchers in the world.
Yeah. Well, in
Well,
that case, it was
well,
Josh
obviously
Hader as well.
everyone in the major leagues are, but you're up against like the very best, particularly in the wild card game. It was like Scherzer and then Strasburg for
Yeah.
the Brewers were up against. So, yeah, but you know what I'm going to say about the fielding error? That basically that's basically how the Giants won 3 World Series, isn't it?
Well, making people make a play. Yeah.
Yeah, you just put the ball. Make sure you put the ball. Obviously, not just put the ball in play. You keep rolling along the ground. It's not going to go that well. But although they did have some, didn't they, where they scored runs on like when it was 2 outs or something on infield grounders and stuff like that. But
Well, there were a
it's
few.
basically they just defend solidly. It's not about the spectacular plays all the time. It's just about make sure you don't make the errors, stupid errors, and
Yeah,
then
and
just
in fact, the
keep
Cardinals
on
who
going and being consistent with at bats I think is the key really.
the
Like I was
Cardinals
saying
who
the
were
other
one
day,
of the teams who screwed up against the Giants. They
yeah,
made a couple yesterday that could have been very costly.
yeah. But how every single at bat counts, you just have to have that attitude of every at bat counting, and just make sure you consistently, you're not giving an out away. Make them do
Yeah,
something to get you out, basically. Um,
yeah. It's actually in a way more of a grind in the regular season because particularly in a series, well, or in a wildcard game, each pitch counts. If you get 3 extra pitches out of Max Scherzer, that
yeah,
means he can't throw to a hitter later in the game when they really need him to, or whatever. Like that's the thing to look at. I think pitch counts are going to be so huge, particularly particularly for the teams whose bullpens aren't deep. There
yeah,
are a few teams in this postseason who have two or three relievers, but you think if they get asked to try and go long or one goes to extra innings, that's where the really good bullpens are another level.
Yeah. Well, I think basically as has been the case like recently and maybe even longer term, uh, the teams that win the World Series or go really far in the postseason don't strike out a huge amount and have really good defense. You know, they're not going to give away a game because I mean, in the wild card, obviously, it's absolutely devastating. But even in the series, you know, it's like you can lose a game on an error, and you go, "Oh, there's always tomorrow." But that hurts massively. That hurts your chances hugely of just giving away a game for free almost in a 5 or a 7 game series. And it's like all of them. Well, like I mean, you know, well, there's the classic, the Giants we were talking about, and then the Royals afterwards. Obviously, hardly struck out at all, and they had Lorenzo Cain, Alex Gordon, Alcides Escobar. Mike Moustakas is a pretty good defensive third baseman. Eric Hosmer obviously is like known as like, well, one of the best defensive first basemen. Is like, you know, they had like good defenders everywhere. And then even the Cubs when they won it, Javier Baez, Rizzo is also like a very good defender at first. And then you've got Jason Hayward, obviously.
Bryant, excellent. Addison Russell was defending very well at that point, at least.
Basically, they just don't have holes, if you know what I mean, in their defense. They don't have anyone that's a liability. And and actually on that theme, well, maybe we don't. Maybe we want to talk. Actually, let's talk about the other wildcard game first. I'll come back to that in a minute. But the other wildcard game, that was just, that was nowhere near as interesting, was it, as the late comeback from the Nationals.
No, I mean, the Yandy Diaz story was quite cool. Coming back from an injury, leading off and hitting home runs his first 2 plate appearances. Sucks for Sean Manaea. The Charlie Morton thing, I think, is really cool that he did well. He didn't actually pitch brilliantly, did he? He had to work through a couple of jams and stuff. But the brilliant thing with that was that looked like a bargain of the off season, and it was a big contract by Rays standards. I can't remember the exact numbers, but
compared to a lot of other teams, that like could have used him. Really, it was like this.
And who he is,
seemed good value. Yeah.
The problem was there's the track record argument, and he's in his mid-30s. So other teams, I think, may have looked at that and been kind of it's like crude analytics. That to me is where you go, no, he's 34. We're not paying him until he's 37.
I think that is the thing that you have certain, because obviously everyone is like uses these sort of analytics. All the teams do things now. These sort of just, I don't know what you'd call them. They sort of have these absolute rules, don't they? If players are over 30, you know, you shouldn't give them long contracts. You shouldn't give them big money and stuff, and you shouldn't rely on them. But I think, the teams that basically started doing it more and do it to a more of an extent, actually. It's not just about blindly following rules. It's like there's actually some thought that goes into it. And Charlie Morton, even though he is in his mid-30s, if you look at his innings numbers, I don't think he pitched that much before he was about 30, did he? Well, not like huge amounts of innings.
No. And the thing is that he's now, because of the noticeable change with the Astros, where he basically just like, I'm going to throw hard now. That because of that, he's not. You can't really judge him on his career because he's almost not the same pitcher. It's not unreasonable to say he's just like not linked to the guy that he was before he was 31 or 32 when he went to Houston.
Very free.
So I thought it was really fitting that he was kind of the guy that led them in that game. It was decided on home runs, which is obviously would have been they're particularly dramatic if you're a Rays fan, but the Athletics weren't really in the game, were they? The Rays just sort of dominated them.
Yeah,
One thing I'd like to touch on though is I have seen a few people, some of it in jest, some of it I think genuinely serious, is this record that the Athletics have about losing 9 consecutive elimination games, and people suggesting that means Billy Beane's methods don't work in the postseason, which is the most ridiculous, idiotic load of garbage you could possibly imagine. Because considering their payroll, the fact that they've been in that many elimination games shows everything. How
yeah,
competitive Oakland have been since Billy Beane's been involved is testament that it is an overarching success. I mean, they've not won World Series, and obviously it sucked. They lost, for them at least, the other day. But this notion that somehow it suggests they're doing things wrong. I mean, ultimately, postseason baseball is sort of a lottery anyway. Like, you'd rather they win, but I mean, come on.
yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. I would say I think there is. I think that obviously it's not completely, uh, you know, always goes that way. But I do think there is definitely a certain sort of player, well, in terms of low strikeouts and stuff, that work better in the postseason than others.
I think potentially, but to suggest that their whole system hasn't been a success because they've not made it to the World Series or anything, I think there
Yeah,
are players that are more favoured. Um, that they're not going to have as many
yeah.
useless outs. I know this
I
is something
think
that a lot analytic people don't like. They don't like this idea of productive outs. All outs are bad and that sort of thing. Um, like I
yeah,
agree with you. Having guys a certain type of hitter is more effective than maybe like you
yeah.
know the
And
guy that
it's
strikes out 180
yeah.
times.
I think that there is the whole thing is that basically it's ridiculous to suggest there's a different thing that works because it's the same sport, which actually is the case. It's the way that the reason why there's certain kinds of teams that do better in the postseason than others is not because the game is different at all. It's just that um, you certain types of hitters and like basically give you a chance, makes a chance for something to happen every single at bat. Whereas, I mean, hitters that strike out a lot, for example, a lot of hitters that just strike out a home run. I mean, they are going to have. There are some times where those guys are just going to get really hot in October, and it's going to be like a counterpoint. And, oh yeah, look, obviously, yeah, you can play that. It's like, well, yes, you can if you're hot. But the thing is, those guys have a tendency to be very, to be streaky. And if they have a bad streak, there's absolutely no chance that they're going to contribute anything at all, pretty much. Those guys could just, in a wildcard game, for example, like someone who's meant to be your best player, like, well, I don't know, say like Chris Davis from the Orioles or something when the Orioles were good. He could he could get really hot and hit 2 home runs and win you the wildcard game, but also there's a decent chance he just strikes out 4 times. Whereas guys that make contact more, they're always going to give you a certain level of, of something, aren't they? There's always going to be a chance every at bat that something can happen. You don't basically like talking about giving away games and stuff with defensive errors. Those guys don't just give away an at bat, whereas the guys that strike out and hit home runs, which is obviously really effective in the regular season and can be effective in the postseason if they get hot. There is also a very good chance that they just give away at bats.
Basically, their range of outcomes is enormous. That's kind
Yeah,
of the thing with those guys. Is
yeah,
it can be that they carry you, like you said.
yeah. There is a chance that it does go really well, but also it's very unlikely that you're going to have a group of those guys that are none of them and they don't have bad periods during a whole month. And then if